And my experience is sitting with people where they have that level of shame inside them, that more toxic shame, as opposed to the healthy shame that it imprisons them, and it causes them to hide.
So the dissipation also of the phenomenon and also the shadow that it casts over us. You spoke about the text from the Gospel of Thomas, apocryphal. It's not, but still we have to also read the things that are apocryphal. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting that shame, it can be a salvation only if we bring it out, and that gaze is reminding you of that. And so if you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So it's like an undigested shame that will continue to haunt you and make your life a misery, or ultimately even destroy you. Right. And we see, of course, when people suffer tremendously, they do horrible things to themselves, and addiction is one of those.
I'm so glad you've named that, Jake, because at one point in my life, I worked with people bereaved through suicide, and I've also sat with people who've been in that place. And as I've listened to their families, who were bereft, and sometimes their family sharing things courageously, you certainly were hearing something of shame, felt like shame, and I wondered about it. And I believe also people who have been in that place, of true suicidality, they're often saying, I'm flawed, and I'm so defective. Like, if people really knew me, if people, and people actually say this, like if people got close to me, really, I'd infect you. Where people have been deeply traumatized, there's a sense, actually, some of them feel that if I allow you to get really close, you're going to get, the sickness in me is going to infiltrate you. Now, sometimes, of course, what's happening is that they've internalized the shame of who has ever violated them. So oftentimes the work is giving that back, releasing it. And I think the Gospel of St. Thomas, the genius of that statement, I don't know when that Gospel was written, but I think there's a real genius in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it leads me on to a couple of things, but one of them, that the imprisonment of shame is with the victim and not with the perpetrator, right? So when you rape is I'm not saying forgotten by the perpetrator, but there's no shame around it because it was a dominating act. But even by vilifying the perpetrator or holding a grudge or all of that, you are forever imprisoned in this shame and hiding it and not, so it's already, I guess, a great step for somebody who's being abused to be able to put it on the table, right? Because then when we can start to work with it. And forgiveness works also like that in very ordinary things. Like when I don't forgive people very ordinary things, they don't even remember that they did it. And I'm still like, well, I remember that time when you didn't buy me a present on my birthday. It was terrible. Right. And however childish, I'm trying to keep it a little bit light, but by forgiving, not forgetting, right? So it's part of your learning journey, but not part of your living journey, right? Because you're just making life less useful and yourself less effective by staying in the past, right? Yeah. And there's a comfort with staying in the past, right? Because you know that Johnny is a bad person. You don't have to make any effort, and he doesn't have to develop, right? Because he might actually be a round character like what we all are. But that creates uncertainty, right? That relationship where there may be healing, and like the paralytic man who says to Jesus, "Well, no, I can't really get to the bath to get healed." Because this, we talked about it last time, I think, but or in a preparatory conversation. because begging and making money is a stable. It was a stable living. So and then the proposal that this might be changed is extremely daunting. What would it look like?
Yeah.
So there's also the alibi.
Yeah.
For fear of a justified fear, right? As for the person going through the experience.
Yeah. Because I just listening to that, like, so we all develop habits, ways of being in the world, and we kind of, thinking about shame. Maybe we've shamed about certain things that we've done, that have been done to us, etc. And so there's this identity, but then who am I beyond that? Who am I beyond what I've done, or what I've done to me? And I think we think about a term like victim consciousness. And of course, people have been brutalized, people have been victimized. That is very true. I would never want to not acknowledge, because I'd be complicit in something, and yet, and beyond, like, my experiences, how my experiences inform me, how I can speak from that place. Sometimes you listen to people, you'll find it in AA rooms, you'll find it with other courageous men and women who'll speak about experiences that they've had, and yet there's no hint, as I listen to them, that they have identified with the experience. But the experience has been worked through in a particular way. And then other times I find myself listening to people on the radio and other things where it feels like something isn't quite sequenced through, and I think shame, can have an enormous hold on us.